But Joe Biden, not going quietly. And before he leaves office in 58 days, our infirmed, incapacitated, addled, atrophied commander-in-chief is going to make things as hard as possible for the new administration when they take over on January the 20th. It is almost like Joe Biden is one of those people that you hear about who mentally are just completely gone, and they get taken advantage of sometimes by people they love the most, family members that make them like change their wills and do things that if they were of sound mind, they wouldn't do. That's what it feels like right now with Joe Biden, who has actually had a historically bad week. But only when you start piecing everything together do you really see just how much damage this one man is doing. And when I say Joe Biden, just know that I don't mean Joe Biden anymore. I'm talking about the people behind the scenes that have controlled him for the last 4 years. So keep that in mind every time I mention Joe Biden's name. But it started on Sunday, when after 1,000 days of war in Ukraine, Joe Biden, totally out of the blue, decided to give Ukraine permission to launch U.S. missiles at Russia, meaning the United States is no longer in a proxy war with Russia. The United States is at war with Russia. That is a fact right now. And when reporters tried to ask the president about what he had just authorized without congressional approval and against the will of the American people who just elected a man who campaigned on ending the war in Ukraine, he couldn't have been bothered. Take a look.
For your birthday, will you talk to us, sir? As a gift to the press, will you please talk to us? Mr. President, President Biden, please, we haven't heard from you all trip. Mr. President!
Okay, so Joe Biden's actions have put the whole world at risk. I've said that every night this week here on the show, which is why you don't elect somebody with dementia. But elections have consequences, and that was the choice of the American people, evidently, back in 2020. And don't think for a second that Joe Biden's actions are not impeachable. They are. And I'm just shocked at the weakness from Republican leadership in the House. Why not just draft articles of impeachment? Why not play some hardball? All right? Take a lesson from Nancy Mace. Do what Democrats do. Democrats impeached Donald Trump 7 days after January 6th. They impeached him on January the 13th. It was symbolic, but they still did it. Remember that? Took them a week. And on the same day that Joe Biden authorized the use of U.S. missiles in Ukraine, he told the world that climate change was in fact the biggest threat to humanity, not the nuclear war that he may have just started.
That's why today I issued an official proclamation to support the conservation of nature around the world. Because the fight to protect our planet is literally a fight for humanity, for generations to come. It may be the only existential threat to all our nations and to all humanity that exists.
All right, after that, old Joe celebrated his 82nd birthday. He's now the oldest president in American history, 5 years older than Ronald Reagan when Reagan left office. After we were told for the better part of 4 years that old Joe was fit to serve another 4 years in office. Remember all that? And while the world teeters on the edge of nuclear war heading into the weekend, Kamala Harris, our vice president, is on vacation in Hawaii. Yes, Doug likes Mai Tais, I guess. And look, I've got no problem with someone taking time off. No problem at all. But maybe when you're the vice president who took over for the sitting president because he was no longer able to be president, maybe you should be back in Washington making sure that we don't all go to war with Russia. On Wednesday, Joe Biden also thought it was a good idea to honor trans community on Twitter on Trans Day of Remembrance. I didn't even know that was a thing, but it is, not to be confused with Trans Day of Visibility in March, Trans Day of Action in June, or Transgender Awareness Week, or Transparent Day, which also exists. The President of the United States tweeting, "Today, on Trans Day of Remembrance, we mourn the transgender Americans whose lives were taken this year in horrific acts of violence. Every American deserves to be treated with dignity and live free of discrimination." That was on Wednesday, the very same day that this man, Jose Ibarra, the illegal alien who murdered 22-year-old nursing student Laken Riley in Athens, Georgia, was sentenced to life in prison. Joe Biden did not tweet about Laken Riley. He didn't contact her family. He didn't say a word. After a man who crossed the border illegally on his watch traveled to Georgia and brutally murdered an innocent, beautiful American girl with her whole life ahead of her. He was sentenced to prison on that day. Instead, Joe Biden, who will now go down as the worst president in American history, tweeted that we should mourn transgender lives that were taken this year by horrific acts of violence. Mr. President, if you're watching, what about the lives of innocent Americans that were taken by horrific acts of violence by illegal aliens? Mr. President, when are we going to get the Victims of Illegal Aliens Remembrance Day? When's that going to happen? Why don't we have that? Why don't we have a day to remember Rachel Morin, Jocelyn Nungary, Laken Riley, and everybody else who's been maimed by an illegal alien on your watch, Joe Biden? Donald Trump said on Truth Social, just after the verdict came down, quote, "We love you, Laken, and our hearts will always be with you. It is time to secure our border so nothing like this can ever happen again." And if you wanted to know more about who Laken Riley really is before she was murdered, she wrote in the Journal. This is tough to hear. It was a letter to her future husband, a man of her dreams. She'd never actually met her future husband, but this is somebody that she dreamed about. And she described what her life would be like when she got married and had kids. Her stepfather read what she wrote in the courtroom while the filth that murdered her sat there emotionless. Take a listen.
I'm so proud of Laken and the beautiful person she was. And while I could stand here and try to tell the world the things that made her such a wonderful person, as well as the many things we have all been robbed and deprived of, I think one of her last journal entries dated 12/17/23 says it best. So here we go. To my future husband. As silly as I feel writing this, my old small group leader once recommended it, so here I am. To my future husband, I want you to know that I'm thinking about you. I'm working every day to become the best wife I can be. By working through my current relationships to best prepare me for ours and our kids one day. I'm focusing on God and what He defines as a faithful Christian life, and so that I can best embody those characteristics. I pray that you know that it is with my full faith and trust in God that I know this relationship has been handcrafted by Him. I pray that we continue to glorify the Lord, prioritize Him in every aspect of our lives, and raise our family, our future family, to be God-fearing Christians as well. I pray God is the center of our relationship as it is a gift from Him. I thank Him for you before I even know you. I can't wait to love you in the best way I know how for the rest of our lives. I pray you know and feel the importance of my love and hopes for our relationship. No matter what challenges we face, I pray that our trust in God and love for one another overrules the obstacle. May our relationship last forever. Your future wife, Laken. That, Your Honor, was our beautiful Laken. That, Your Honor, is just a glimpse of what was tragically and brutally taken from her and us that day.
Have you ever heard something so darn tragic, so sad? We normally wouldn't play a soundbite that long, but how do you cut something like that up? That's Laken Riley, 22 years old. Everything you just heard, she'll never have the opportunity to do. She'll never get married. She'll never have a family. She'll never have children because of the man that was sitting to the left of her family there. The illegal alien that came here on Joe Biden's watch and brutally murdered her over the course of 18 minutes in Athens, Georgia, not far from the University of Georgia campus. Can you imagine what that family's going through right now? That's Joe Biden's America, where foreign borders matter more than our border, where our sitting president tweets about mourning trans lives, trans Americans who make up less than 0.5% of the U.S. population. And that's the priority of this current White House. Good riddance. Good riddance. And to anyone who voted for Kamala Harris, I hope you're watching too. And I hope you're thinking about that right now and what this country has looked like over the last 4 years. And I hope the rest of the media can stop rolling out the complaint wagon every time Donald Trump nominates a new cabinet choice. That's not the way it should be. Kamala Harris also saying nothing about Laken Riley. She's in Hawaii, remember? Despite faking to care about Laken Riley when she sat down with Bret Baier when she was still trying to be elected president. Take a look.
This is a specific policy decision by your administration to release these men into the country. So what I'm saying to you, do you owe
Brett,
those families an apology?
Let me just say, first of all, those are tragic cases. There's no question about that. There's no question about that. And I can't imagine the pain that the families of those victims have experienced.
She's a liar. She's a despicable human being. In Hawaii, she did tweet. They have cell phone service in Hawaii. She tweeted yesterday, quote, "Every person should be able to live free from violence and discrimination." And for a moment, I thought she was talking about Laken Riley, but she wasn't. She went on to say, "On Transgender Day of Remembrance, we remember all of the lives that have been lost to anti-trans violence, and we will continue to stand by bigotry and hate." I don't know what she's talking about. On the Thursday after the verdict, things got worse. Joe Biden, one day after the verdict, decided that it was the right time to make it easier for illegals heading to our southern border right now before Donald Trump takes over to cross without any problems, any hiccups, quietly loosening immigration policies. Illegal aliens will now be able to walk right by checking in with an ICE agent, which will make crossing a whole lot easier for thousands of people. And today, Friday, after setting the stage for nuclear war on Sunday, something that we have talked about all week, and we're going to continue to talk about it because nobody else really is. Some people finally are talking about it. But Joe Biden thought he'd top off the week sending more money that no one approved of, including Congress. Today, Joe Biden sending another $275 million to Ukraine. Is anyone else just tired of this at this point? It's like maniacal that we are still talking about this. All of that, everything I just mentioned in a single week, as Joe Biden works to ruin the country as quickly as possible. He's got 58 days left. He continues to act like it's his first 100 days in office, not his last 60. In Washington forever, by the way.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.